Hello, everyone. So today is going to be one of those special talks where we have a featured guest here in the Inner Globetrotters group. And today, if you have been feeling like in life you're circling around and you can't seem to land at that life that you want to land on, let me tell you this. Today's talk is going to be one that you are not going to want to miss because this next featured guest, her message, her story is one that will empower you, is one where you will learn and grow. So let me invite over Marci. Hello, Marci.
Hello. Are we live already?
We're live already.
Wow.
And everyone, let me just say this. Seriously, like I said earlier, if you have found yourself in your life where you're like, okay, why am I not having what it is that I want in my life? Why is it that things are not working out for me? This next guest, I'm telling you, it's going to be empowering. It's going to be inspirational. It's going to be very moving. You see how tongue-tied I get? So let me present you to Marci Brockman. She is an author, podcaster, an artist, and an English teacher. As an emotional abuse survivor, journal writing is what saved her. And she has been writing expressively in journals for 35 years. And this has become the basis of her two books, Permission to Land, Searching for Love, Home, and Belonging, and Permission to Land, Personal Transformation Through Writing, which you will see in a few of those books. Okay. Marci is also a painter with her own online art gallery, and she hosts a YouTube channel called What's Up, Marci. In November 2020, she began her highly lauded podcast, Permission to Heal, which, by the way, I highly recommend that you subscribe. Yes. Subscribe and listen.
And yes. Aura was a guest early on. Yes.
Which is available on all major podcast listening platforms. She has also been a contributing writer for Elephant Journal, Fairy Got Boss, and Medium, among others, and was featured on ideamensch.com. I hope I said that right.
You did. Perfect.
Marci's concept is one of giving ourselves permission to be our authentic self, permission to be relentlessly self-compassionate, permission to focus on our dreams, and permission to heal ourselves as we build the rich, abundant life we richly deserve. Marci, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm thrilled to be here. Just listening to your introduction, and I'm exhausted just thinking about all that stuff.
Well, you've done a lot. And can you please show everyone your books? Because seriously.
Here's the hardcover version of Permission to Land. It's my memoir. I just saw on Amazon right now, they're selling the hardcover for $10.80 or something. It's cheaper than the paperback, actually, but it's available in hardcover, in paperback, in ebook, and in audiobook. I actually narrated the audiobook myself. So that's available on Amazon and Audible. But the books are available anywhere you buy books online. So this is my whole life, my whole heart. And as you said, Aura, journal writing has been my salvation. Like before I knew how to articulate what I was going through or what names to call things, I just resorted to writing. And I took a few of them out, keeping journals for 38 years. So I've got an entire Rubbermaid crate filled with these books. And they have like cards and other things like stuffed in and Post-its and all sorts of stuff. But I've got from 1983 through 2021 in writing. Some on books like this, some on legal pads. I have an app on my phone and on my Mac that sync with each other so that I can write anywhere. So I've been using that for a few years. So yeah, so the process of writing is what birthed personal transformation through writing. So a lot of people that I have come across have said that they're sort of interested in starting a journal, but they don't know where to start. They see the blank page or the blank screen and they don't know what to do. It's intimidating. So I provided over 100 pages of writing prompts to get people started. And they're just launching off points from where, it'll get you started and then you can go anywhere else you feel like going. I mean, it's your journal. So that's what that is. It's a companion. So basically completing the guided journal workbook would essentially walk someone through the process of doing the self memory analysis that I went through when writing the memoir. It's basically the concept.
That is so awesome. And I can't wait to get the copy. Oh my God. And everyone, there are signed copies. You could just go to our site. No worries. I'm going to be putting all that information for you so you could get your copy as well. And Marci, I would like to ask you, can you share your story with us for us to learn even more about you?
Sure. I grew up on Long Island. I am 52. So I was born in 1968. And my mother was an undiagnosed bipolar and a bit narcissistic and very anxious. And I grew up not knowing from 1 hour to the next sometimes whether she was going to be Cruella de Vil or she was going to be Mary Poppins. And those were the two personas in my little kid brain that I was able to attach to the moods that she was in. So I grew up with a lot of uncertainty. And my dad worked like 99 jobs to support us, so he wasn't around all that much. And I grew up realizing that if I was a good girl and I did what my mother expected me to do, or my perception of what my mother expected me to do, that it was more likely that she would be Mary Poppins and not Cruella de Vil. So it taught me to be the good girl, to be a people pleaser, to anticipate her needs and sublimate my own. And I used that relationship template throughout my life, when making friends, when starting to date guys, when working for in my first early jobs. That's just who I became. And yes, I had things that I wanted to do. And for the most part, I thought that I was living my own life, but I had a lot of trust issues with myself. I didn't really trust that my impulses or my desires were worthy, that I was worthy of love, that I was worthy of love just by sheer being me. I felt like I had to work to please other people. And then if they were happy with me, then I could be happy with me, and not vice versa. And I was that way until my 40s, my early 40s. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure there's many people that go around and they probably are not even aware of how their programming is shaping the relationships that they're having with people, and how these issues are essentially not, and I'm going to ask you about this
Okay.
later on, but essentially has them circling around in life.
There's my metaphor. I caught you.
I know it's because of you, of course. And we're going to touch on that a little later on. But it's interesting how you were able to realize that there was this conditioning that was ruling your life.
No, and all of the guys that I was dating as a college student and in my early 20s were male versions of my mother. And I was reliving or reprogramming that same kind of relationship, picking guys who were narcissistic, who were very demanding, who didn't show me a lot of respect, but expected me to cater to them, which was the same sort of relationship, the same dynamic I had with my mom. And it wasn't until after, I mean, and my first husband, my relationship was like that with him too. And it wasn't until after I divorced him that I started to see what the pattern was, because I had found a new therapist, same therapist I'm still with now. It's been 12 years or something. I started to recognize the behavior and the pattern and see what I was doing and start to unravel the need, the addiction to fix other people, to selflessly volunteer to put their oxygen masks on first, to fill their cups up first, whatever metaphor you want to use. And it wasn't healthy. Not only was it not healthy for me, but it was also impossible to do because we are very limited in our capacity to make other people happy. We can't do that for them. We can't affect significant change in their life. You know, we could do tasks for them if they need their banking done or some groceries, or you want to clean someone's kitchen. You can do tasks for them that would momentarily make them happy, but there really isn't anything significant that you can do for someone else that's going to make their life holistically better. And so I kept failing. And every time I kept failing, I would feel bad about myself. And it was my therapist and writing extensively in journals that helped me figure this out, figure out what I was doing and figure out how to trust myself.
It's so interesting that you said, and I'm quoting, and please forgive me if I butcher this, but
That's
we
good. We're live. It's fine.
we are limited in our capacity to help others. And what I like about that is the following, and everyone, I hope you grasp the wisdom behind Marci's words. This is going to be an interview you're going to want to rewatch, re-listen again, because she has said so much that you're going to want to listen to really absorb it. So what I love about that is the fact that sometimes when we didn't grow up with a healthy relationship with our family, we tend to take on this programming that we need to please people. And in the process, we take on the responsibility of being the one that saves others when we can only save ourselves.
Right. And then when we ultimately fail because we can't save them, in my experience, they would get mad at me because I failed. So they sort of set us all up for failure and disappointment. You know what I'm saying? Do you know where I'm going? So, you can't, like I said, you could do tasks for people, but you can't really change their outlook or make them healthier or change their relationships with themselves or with anyone else. And when you fail and the relationship is staked on that and your self-esteem is staked on that, then it's going to all collapse like a house of cards because it can't exist.
I love that you said that, because it almost seems like when we unhook ourselves, because see, when we rely on someone else for our self-esteem and our happiness or whatnot, we're on a hook.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we need to unhook in order for us to even, well, before I even go there, I want to ask you this.
Sure.
Would you dare to say that in order for us to have healthy relationships, because who isn't searching for love? This is the month of love, right?
Right.
And who wouldn't want to land in the love of their life, right?
Right.
Would you say that the inner work must be done? Would you say that first the person needs to do their own healing before they can
Oh,
see?
of course. Absolutely. Otherwise, every relationship that you're going to embark on is going to be half full or half empty. You know, it's not going to be filled with meaning and connection, or the ultimate, the healthy interdependent love that you'd want, not the codependent one. But you have to do the solitary, digging deep, hard work on yourself first. And my tools for this really are writing, because that's where I figure stuff out. You know, I don't generally have a predetermined idea of what I'm going to write. I start out sort of writing, you know, what's going on in my life. And I run through, like, my husband, my kids, I run through the people. And since I've written last, this is what's happened. And that's always a launching off point for discussion of, or exploration or description of larger things that happened, or more significant, even more minute, but more emotionally significant things. And sometimes I'll be typing or I'll be writing, and I don't know how to explain it, but it's almost like my brain is immediately communicating with my hand, and I'm writing things that I'm not 100% aware that I'm writing. I know that sounds really strange, but there's times where I've like rewritten what I just wrote in my journal, or what I wrote like 2 days ago, and it's like I'm reading it for the first time. So you sort of get into the flow, into the whole like zen of the whole thing. I also have learned a lot of lessons about patience and forgiveness and compassion, self-compassion, through painting. Who would have thought? You know, my divorce is final. It was a few months after my mom died, and I started painting again after a really long hiatus. I hadn't painted in years. And I started a little bit, very tentatively, on some small canvases with some cheap acrylic paint I got at Michael's craft store. And I was just painting some flowers, and like, you know, this is kind of fun. And at first I was like really nervous and overly critical about every little brush stroke. And then I realized that if I didn't like it, I could throw it out, no harm, no foul, or I could take white or black paint and just whoosh, whoosh, paint over the whole canvas again and start over. Like, it's the most forgiving of mediums. I'm a little afraid of oil painting. I don't have the patience to wait for oil to dry, but acrylic is pretty quick, and, you know, you can just keep layering the color, but I find it a meditative experience. Like, I'm not really one who would just sit and be quiet and breathe and meditate that way. To me, there has to be some sort of action. So it could be walking, or for me, it's mostly like a creative task, like painting or collaging, or, you know, whatever other visual art medium there is. And it has taught me a ton of things about myself that I wouldn't have thought possible.
I do remember you saying that creativity is meditative. So
Yeah.
I would like to ask you, in what way is it meditative?
Well, okay. So to me, my understanding of meditation is that when you free your brain from being encumbered by the minutia of life, that we can get in touch with the whispers of our inner heart. And someone else on the podcast said that, and I just love that phrase. I keep using it all the time. And it allows some restorative flow or energy. That's the way I think of it. You know, like if I sit there and I try to be quiet and do like the typical meditation thing where I'm focusing on my breath and the in and the out of my breath, and I'm trying to keep my thoughts away from grocery shopping and teaching and a conversation I had with my daughter, and, oh, there's a cat meowing at the door, or like whatever other thing, when I'm trying to just focus on my breath, it's centering and it's balancing and grounding. And I feel attached to the earth, and I feel like I'm inside my body. And it allows me to process and think without thinking. There's thought and emotional processing of thoughts almost without cognitively thinking about them in a forward thinking way. I'm probably not making any sense to anybody,
No, you
but
are.
that's what it feels like to me. When I'm painting, it's the same thing. Like I might have a paintbrush in my hand focusing on a flower petal or a sunset rays or the way the water looks when the sun hits it, whatever it is that I'm painting. And it's wordlessly blending colors and highlights and so on. And even though I'm concentrating on what I'm doing, I've become aware that it frees up, I don't know, neuroscience, but all of those other parts of my brain to process things that are bothering me, emotional things, old trauma, new stuff, things that I'm anxious about, and I things start to make sense in a very different way.
It seems like to me, like when you're in that creative mode, the reason why it's very meditative is because you are in the present moment.
Right.
You're thinking right now about what it is that you're doing. This is what matters. And so all the chatter, whatever it is that has been going on, it's like on the background, but it doesn't even matter. It's
Right.
like it's like I'm in New York City and there's so much noise. And when I'm doing whatever it is that I'm doing, my videos, whatever,
Yeah.
to me, that's just
It
background
doesn't
noise.
exist.
It doesn't exist. So it
Now,
sounds
in
to me,
some way, I'm not going to interrupt you, but in some way, I find, and this is going to sound really preposterous, but in some way, I find teaching sometimes to be the same exact thing because it's very much, in order to do it well, you have to be 1000% in the present moment. You can't be thinking about balancing your checkbook, and you can't think about whether you fed the cats, and you can't think about what you're making for dinner. You can't even think about whether you have enough gas in your car to get home. All you're doing is thinking about what you're trying to talk about with the students in the room and what they're doing and what their needs are in that little class period. And when I was going through my divorce and when I was trying to find balance again after my mother died, those two very stressful periods in my life, I realized how grateful I was for my job because I got to have these amazing conversations about literature with teenagers. I teach 11th and 12th grade. So with 16, 17, 18-year-olds, I got to have these amazing conversations about characters and conflicts and relationships and all this really wonderful stuff to impart like emotional literacy to my students and get them to start thinking critically about these things. And I didn't have to think about all the other crap that was going on in my life. I got to take a bit of a vacation from that and just focus on my students. This
I
year, it's been hard to achieve because of COVID, but it's why I'm still here after 25 years.
I love how you say, basically, in other words, that our job and what it is that we do, that can be our vacation in a way. And as a matter of fact, I'm a big believer, and I think you would be a believer too, that it's so important that whatever it is that we're doing for a living, it becomes something that we actually enjoy. I
Right.
mean, because otherwise, if we have a lot going on in our personal life, that just becomes something more that we're adding
Right.
on.
Compounds the
Yeah.
negativity. Yeah.
Now, I want to ask you this. How did you get closure and heal yourself after everything that you went through?
Good question. It took me a very long time to come to grips with the failure of my marriage. Um, took me a really long time to figure out that divorce was a way to end that pain of living in the very lonely marriage that I had been in for 12 years. And it also became a way for me to save my kids because I realized when I was contemplating divorce that yes, I was divorcing my ex-husband for me, but I was also divorcing him for my kids because I didn't want my kids to have that as their emotional relationship template. I didn't want a marriage like that for them. I didn't want them to expect that for themselves. And so that kind of made it easier for me to get over the trauma of that, because I knew that it was good for all of us. And that ultimately, even my husband, who protested the divorce initially, was grateful that we had all underwent the process and that I had been the one that had ripped the Band-Aid off, so to speak. Um, by being alone with myself and not being afraid to be alone with myself, when my kids would go visit their dad and I would have the house by myself, at first I kind of didn't know what to do with myself. I didn't become a mom to be a mom part-time. And so when the kids were at their dad's for the weekend, I was like, well, now what the hell do I do? Like, I couldn't figure out what to do with myself. And so I devoted myself to exercise and art, to meditative, to purpose-driven exercises that are good for my well-being. And it helped immeasurably help me get on the road, plus therapy. And obviously journal writing has been pervasive. After my mom died, she had been, like I said before, a narcissistic bipolar, but she was also, like, in the last decade ish, maybe decade and a half of her life, an opiate drug addict. And it completely changed who she was. And she said a lot of things that I wish I could unhear, that she never took responsibility for. She never even admitted that she said. She might not have remembered. It might have been in a drug-induced haze and she might not have remembered, but okay. So after she died, I had a lot of unresolved grief, not only for her death, but I had cut her out of our lives the last 18 months of her life because she had become so toxic. I needed to end the intergenerationality of addiction and not let that affect my kids. And so when my mom died and I had to then eulogize her because I'm the only child, how was I going to get from all of that anger to someplace respectful, at least, if not loving? How was I going to get to some sort of peaceful place to send her off into the next, whatever happens next, and leave the other mourners, the people who came to her service, with something palatable, something respectful, something generous, something compassionate? And so I spent the 48 hours between when she died and the funeral, because in the Jewish religion, you have to be buried pretty damn quick. I spent that time going through 70 years of family photos. And I happened to be the keeper of the photo, so it was easy, but I went through all the pictures of my mother as a baby and as a child with pigtails and little braids and in the arms of her parents and playing with her little sister, and pictures of her in high school and when she first met my dad, and pictures of her with me as a baby, and so on. You get the idea. And I started to see her as a cherished, loved child, and as she was gorgeous, as a beautiful, statuesque, gorgeous woman, and as the doting mother she was when I was a little girl. And I saw the love she had for me, and I saw how safe I felt in her arms before things changed. And it helped open up my heart to the love and compassion I had with her and for her before the proverbial shit hit the fan, you know? And that's what helped. I think when we start to see compassion and empathy, we can heal anything.
You said something very powerful that I need for everyone to even notice this, because I think it could be quite easy to not notice this. But I think that one of and this is what you were explaining in terms of what you did. There are times that it's so hard for us to even get to a point of having compassion for someone that has hurt us. It's because all we're seeing is what that person did to us, that hurt, that.
And how we felt with that, right?
Whereas when we can start looking at that person, not for what they showed us, of who they have been and probably even their own journey,
Hmm.
what their life has been like, we're able to see a different picture because we're able to see
The
the
humanity in
whole
them.
we're able to see the whole picture as opposed to just that one little detail in that
Right.
photo, for lack of a better metaphor at this very moment. And it's pretty interesting. Sometimes that is necessary in order for us to even get to a point where we can step away from all the hurt that that one person may have caused us.
Right.
Because even when we focus on just that hurt, we can get so stuck.
That's what I was doing. I was stuck. I was ruminating just in that horrible place. And for myself, I needed to figure out how to get out of that.
Yeah.
That's a toxic place to be.
Oh, yeah.
And by the time we got to her funeral, and it was 48 hours, it was a fast process. I kind of had whiplash from that for a while. I was able to find the empathy and the compassion to see her as a three-dimensional dynamic human being that had some flaws and yeah, did some pretty shitty things to me, but she didn't do them maliciously. She didn't do them purposely. She had a limited toolbox with a lot of dents in it and did what she could with what she had. And she wasn't a very happy person. She had a long, protracted illness as a young girl that sort of shaped her into a very shy, timid person. And she didn't have a huge self-esteem. So she didn't marry appropriately. She and my dad were a terrible match. And so it goes.
That just shows you that whatever people give is it's not necessarily, or it's, I would dare to say 99% of the time, it's not a reflection of us, it's a reflection of them. It's a
Right.
reflection of what is within them. It's a reflection of whatever it is that is going on. And so I want to ask you this. This is my next question.
Okay.
Title
This
of
is
the
fun.
yeah. The title of the book, because that is so catchy, right?
Yeah.
Permission to Land. May I ask you why you chose this title and what does it stand for?
Sure. Okay. So in January of 2015, I had written a piece for Elephant Journal. I believe it was called Choosing Our People Wisely, but I could be wrong about the title. But within that piece, I wrote about feeling like I wasn't wholly in my life. I didn't feel like I had my feet on the ground. I didn't feel like I was in my life. I felt like I was an airplane endlessly circling an airport waiting for permission to land. Like I was looking for external permission or external validation to allow me to move forward into my life, to allow me to pursue the things that I was interested in or the people I was interested in or whatever. Like I felt stuck. And my very good friend, Michael, who I actually married, was very supportive of my writing. We've been friends since 1987. So he was very supportive of the things that I was writing, and he would make comments on all my pieces and so on. So after I wrote this, I felt like an airplane endlessly circling, waiting for permission to land. He put a picture of a runway as the cover photo on his Facebook page. And I did not know the connection between the two. He's an avid video game player, so I assumed it had something to do with that. And I didn't even question him. I didn't even ask. Oops, did you spill
Sorry,
something?
my phone fell. This is where I'm seeing all the comments and everything. So my apologies for that.
No worries. It's totally fine. So he made the cover photo a runway, and we were going about our lives. I was dating somebody else and chatting with him, and we were friends. We'd been friends since 87, but we'd never gone out. There was nothing romantic ever between us. And then Thanksgiving of that same year of 2015, the night before Thanksgiving, I was up in the middle of the night, hysterically crying at 3 a.m. I was lonely. I had just gone through yet another breakup. It was yet another one of these narcissistic parasites that I was dating. And it was like the universe had finally given me the 4x4 to the head that I needed to know not to do this again. Choose better. I should listen to my choose your people wisely advice from the previous January and choose my damn people wisely. Anyway, so I was reading an article about soulmates. It basically said that by the time you reach a certain age, you've probably met your soulmate. And here are the criteria or the behaviors or the description of what a soulmate would be, according to this particular author of this article that I can't find anymore. And the first person I thought of was my friend Michael. And I went, could that be? So I sent him the article at 3 a.m. with a note that said, if you read this and you think this might be us, let me take you to dinner so we can talk about it. And I hit send. And the first thing I did was curse myself. How could I possibly do this? And what if he doesn't feel that way? I could ruin a 29-year friendship, whatever. Okay. Unbeknownst to me, that very night, he had gone to bed praying on his hands and knees, because he's more religious than I am, for a woman to come into his life exactly like me, specifically me. And then he went to bed. About 4 hours later is when I had my little crying jag and sent him the article. So he woke up first thing in the morning and he was on his knees again. How could God have answered his prayer so quickly and so concretely? He was mystified. He immediately called me and said, yes, I read the article. Yes, I think it could be us. Let's go out to dinner. And so we went out to dinner and we started talking in a very different way. And by the end of January, we were completely in love. And it was a foregone conclusion we were going to be together for the rest of our lives. 6 months later, I proposed to him. And 6 months after that, we got married. And somewhere in there is when he admitted to me that the cover photo on his Facebook thing was in response to that I had written. So this is the long-winded story. There's no way to tell this faster. So when I was trying to come up with a title for this book, which I didn't start writing until October 1st of 2019, it really came down to the fact that the whole novel, the whole memoir rather, is centered around my quest to find a place to land. And realizing that the person who was going to give me the place to land is myself. And the person who was giving me, the person who was giving me the place to land and the permission to land was me. And I figured out that all of that has to be intrinsic, has to be internal, has to be the whispers of our own hearts that we're listening to, not someone else's, right? And so it just sort of seemed a foregone conclusion that this book had to be called Permission to Land. I went through probably 17 or 18 other iterations, and I had a Facebook poll and the whole thing. And ultimately, this is what I chose. It's the only thing it could have been. There's your long story.
Wow, wow, wow. And I was going to ask you too about how you and your husband got together.
Yeah,
Because
I
I
asked him
saw this.
out, and then it just took us a while to really me. He was hook, line, and sinker in day one, first date, already planning what we were doing the next summer. But I was so afraid to make another mistake that I was a little cautious. And it took me probably about 6 weeks to sort of figure out what I needed to figure out and trust what was happening.
What is so interesting about the story, as well as the whole Permission to Land title, is the fact that you listened to that voice within you, guiding you to do the next thing and the next thing and the
Mm-hmm.
next thing. And it is when we dare to listen to ourselves, even when we don't understand what that is,
Right.
that life can start unfolding one by one,
Mm-hmm.
one by one. Sometimes I think we're waiting for things to come all at once, and it doesn't happen that way. It's one step and then the next, and then the next. But trusting yourself, and like you said, giving yourself the permission.
Mhm.
So I'm going to ask you this: for those who have trouble giving themselves permission to land in the life and love that they want, what would you recommend be the first step for them to do so?
The first step, I think, for anything, before you can even make a plan, is to figure out where you are and what you want. And so the first step that I would recommend for anybody is to start with writing. And even if it's just simply like, who am I? What was my childhood like? How did that affect my relationships? How did that affect who I am now? What am I happy about with my life now? What am I unhappy about with my life now? Where would I like to be in 1, 2, 5, 10 years, whatever time frame? And then how do we make that happen? You know, if you want to go back to school, you want to change your career, or you want to fix your relationship with your parents, or be a better mom, or um, just like yourself better, feel more comfortable in your skin. All of that comes from getting in touch with who you are. And unless you're willing to sit by yourself, and this has to be done solitarily or coupled with therapy. It can't be done in a group, and it can't be done by avoiding being alone or by avoiding the tough questions or the tough answers. You have to just rip the Band-Aid off and be brave. So buy a dollar notebook at the dollar store and a pen that you're comfortable with, and just start answering some questions about yourself, basic stuff. And then that's going to lead you to the next memory or the next evolution of your idea about who you are and what you want. After, and that could take hours, years, months, depends on how much you're dedicated to the process and what you're trying to accomplish. But I think that, what do they say? Doing something every day for 6 weeks becomes a habit or something like that. I think that making it a practice in your life is a good place to start.
So I would like to ask you this: for those who think that it is impossible for them to heal from a dysfunctional family or anything that may have hurt them in the past, what would you say that can make them change their mind? You know how sometimes someone can
Yeah.
have such a deep, deep wound that
Yeah.
just doesn't seem to heal?
I'm going to answer this in the voice of a previous therapist I had when I was 20-ish. I was going through a particularly difficult time. My parents' divorce was still not final after it had gone on for years, and they were weaponizing me against each other. It was ridiculous. And I was just flailing. I felt like I was throwing darts at an invisible dartboard, trying to figure out where I was going. There was nothing about my life that I was comfortable with. And I was trying to figure out whether it was even possible to heal my relationship. I was specifically talking about my dad at that point. And what he said to me was, your parents, in this case, we could say your family, in most cases, if they're not actually murderers or running a meth house or a brothel out of your house, if they're most people, they're not doing anything that they're doing to you maliciously. They're using whatever limited tools they have to do the best that they know how to do, or the most that they're capable of. And you don't have to accept what they're offering. But you have to figure out if having, I'm going to say this wrong. What he said was, your parents aren't maliciously trying to hurt you. They're just doing their best. And you have to decide if their best is going to be enough for you. And if you can accept them for the flawed human beings that they are, and figure out how to provide the rest of what you need for yourself, which is really ultimately what you have to do anyway. So he said, you have to decide whether you want to continue your relationship with your parents, even though they're disappointing you by not doing the things that you want them to do, or saying not loving you the way you need to be loved. If they're loving you the only way they're capable of loving, you have to figure out if you're willing to accept that. And if you are, great. And if you're not, you have no guilt. You can just walk away. Not that that's easy, but it was empowering.
It's so interesting what you say, because I think that as human beings, we're all flawed. And culture also plays, there's so many things that plays a role in our upbringing and how our parents are. Sometimes we fail to realize that sometimes we think we're being ourselves.
Right.
But we're not. We're a product of who our parents have been.
Mm-hmm.
They're a product of who they have been surrounded by, and culture plays a big role in that.
Sure.
So I just want to share this really quick because it's going to tie into all this. And I love how you say that we need to be willing to do the work. A lot of it is solitary work, because we need to be willing to do the journey within. And we need to be honest about where we are, where we're wanting to go, and blah, blah, blah. There was a point even in my life where I felt stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a hatred that I had towards a part of me. And what I didn't realize at the time, and I did coaching for this, I didn't do therapy, because I'm the kind of person that I like to get from point A to point B like this.
Quick. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk therapy is not quick.
Yeah, it's not quick. And the process was not quick, but it was a lot quicker than if it would have been through therapy. And
yeah, when I started this, there were no such thing as coaches.
yeah. Yeah.
Unless you were talking about a track team or a football team or something.
Yeah.
You know?
And I remember that I started realizing that my hatred came, of course, parents played a role, but more so it was culture and society.
Mhm.
And so it was something, and I love the word that you use, unravel. It was something that I had to unravel. And there was a lot of forgiving that I had to do along the way.
Right. You're not only forgiving your family, your extended family, even your larger culture for the things that they have attempted to imprint on you, but you have to forgive yourself for your own flaws and your own humanity, and in whatever haphazard trial and error way you tried to deal with it. Like when I was writing my memoir, I was writing the story, but I was using my journals as like historical primary source documents as references for what had happened, for the fights I had with my mom, or my parents' divorce and the things that I was saying about it, or relationships, or whatever it was that I was writing about. But I wasn't using my 52-year-old brain and decades old memories of those events. I was actually able to use my own words and call myself out on my bullshit. So I was just as hard on myself as I was on everyone else, because otherwise it would not have been an authentic analysis. I was taking a long view back to try to figure out how my mother's pathology, or the pathology of my family, affected who I became and the choices that I made, and how I could undo the things that I didn't like in order to make myself grounded and sane and joyous and provide meaning and connection in my life. And I couldn't do it if I wasn't truthful with myself about some of the crappy ways I handled certain situations. I mean, we all make mistakes and we all do things that we regret, or maybe not regret so much as wish went slightly differently, which may be the same thing. It all boils down to who you are at this moment. So, unless you're chopping people up and putting them in little bags, I don't really think there's too much that we all need to regret, trying to inject some humor because this could get serious. Probably wasn't funny. We were watching a crime show earlier this afternoon. So I have this in my brain.
You make me laugh. Now, I want to ask you this. Would you say that one heals themselves and starts giving themselves permission to land, that this leads to self-love, which leads to all the other things that they want in their life, including the love of their life? And how so?
Okay. It's a large question. Okay. So
I'm gonna break it into pieces.
So ultimately, the process, one would hope that as we start going through the trauma and the bad experiences that we have like buried under the dirty laundry in the corners of our room, that we're now kind of uncovering and taking reckoning of. One would hope that in the process of doing that, even if we found ourselves culpable of a bunch of stuff we're not proud of, that ultimately we'd come to peace with what transpired and we'd start to make sense over our actions and other people's actions based on context and based on emotional tools or literacy and so on, emotional literacy. I think that going forward in our lives, knowing that we have put those things into perspective and have healed, you're never going to forget. I don't want people to forget these things, but to have put them in context with other things that allows us to make peace with it, ultimately creates self-compassion, because we are seeing ourselves as flawed humans who are just trying their best. And when we can see ourselves in a compassionate way, I think that's where the growth and the empathy starts with ourselves. And we can't have empathy and compassion for others in any real sense until we have it with ourselves. We learn the patience we need to find it within ourselves, then we find it with other people. I don't think that relationships can be the deep, rewarding, true, interconnected, honest love if we can't have all of that with ourselves. Like one little example, because I grew up being a people pleaser and I grew up trying to fix other people, I didn't think that I myself was worthy of help. Right? So I could help you figure out whatever, how to pay your taxes, how to hire somebody to go do something for you, where the best vacation spot is for the time frame that whatever ridiculous thing, But if I had a problem, I was afraid to ask for help because I didn't think that the people who I asked would actually help me. I didn't think I was worthy of that help. It wasn't so much like that I'm a type A and that I had to do it myself so it would be done right. It wasn't like that. It was like I was literally afraid to ask for help because I was afraid of the rejection when the person would obviously say no. Like it was a foregone conclusion in my head. So for a very long time, I didn't ask and had been disappointed when I did ask a few times. But when I'm now married to Michael for 4 years, we've been together for a little over 5, and I am much better about asking for help because I know that it gives him as much pleasure to help me as it gives me to help him or anybody else. So what I realized was if you are in the right relationship or with a relationship with somebody who is going to reciprocate in kind, then if you want to help someone because you enjoy being useful and helping them through something, then wouldn't it stand to reason that that person would enjoy being useful and beneficial to you and want to help you through something that not only does it make you feel good, but it makes them feel good for helping you? And I realized that the giving of help and the accepting of help and the offering of help is one big, like, infinity reciprocal event or energy transfer.
Well, it's necessary. I think that we get into, well, there's several things that you said that was very, very interesting that I need to break down.
Sure. Yeah,
One,
that was a lot.
yeah, well, one is it's so interesting how sometimes we could be so set in our ways in believing certain things that in the process we we hurt ourselves in the process
Right.
because of the lack of worthiness, but also we we don't allow others to do what they could do for us and what they would like to do for us.
And that we would really like to feel them do for us.
Yes, because the giving and receiving, there is this necessity for there to be both in a
Yeah,
relationship. But
absolutely.
when all there is giving, 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 giving can be so exhausting at times.
Right.
And it's not that the giving is exhausting, it's just that there needs to be this balance between the giving and the receiving. You need to be filling yourself up as you are giving. So when all you're doing is just, it's like a jar. If all you're doing is just pouring, 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 after a while, the jar is going to be empty.
Right.
There's not going to be nothing unless you keep filling in. And so a relationship, when there is this giving and receiving, there's this constant giving, but you're also filling each other's cup up.
Right.
I think for that to happen, and you touch it, you touched on it without even saying it, but you said it, and I want people to really pick this up. The healing within needs to occur.
Yeah.
And we need to be having this healthy relationship with ourselves that consists of us having a self esteem that is intact, a self concept, meaning the way we view ourselves has to be a healthy one. We need to know that we are deserving of good,
Mhm.
because unless our self esteem and our self concept is intact, we will never land at that very thing that we want in our life because of that self worthiness issue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So in the episode of my podcast, Permission to Heal, that landed today, or dropped, or whatever the term is, it's a special Valentine's Day episode with a four-way conversation between me and my husband, Michael, who met I was in my late 40s and he had turned 50. So it was a midlife romance, midlife marriage. And my friend Craig, who was actually the editor of my book, and his wife, Elisa, who were of comparable age, and they met and married also. So it was a four-way conversation about adult healing and midlife romance and marriage. And it's a super
Right.
long episode, but I spent like 8 hours on Sunday doing the tech on it, trying to figure out how do I trim this because it's too long. And I got like 20 minutes off and it's still almost 2 hours. So people should make themselves a cup of tea and get a snack or fill their car up with gas, go for a ride, do it in parts if you have to. But it's so jam-packed with value. And Craig actually, and Elisa answered your question. I had asked it of them, actually. So Craig got a divorce from his first wife. And I'm sure he won't mind me explaining this because he said it on my podcast and it's already live. So he got a divorce from his wife and was friends with Elisa. And in their friendship, they talked about stuff. They're both writers. They talked about a lot of things that they shared, their common friends, etc. And there started to be a blossoming of a relationship between them. And I think Elisa saw the potential before Craig did. And they were planning a trip together to sort of get to know one another on a different level. And at the very last minute, Elisa canceled the trip. And she said, I think the timing's off. I really want this. And I know you do too. But the timing's off because you haven't been divorced long enough. And I know you have some personal work to do before we embark on this, because if we jump too soon, we're going to screw it up.
Like, you could see me, I'm like doing
Yeah.
this. I know people cannot see as you're speaking. I want everyone to really, really take in what she just said. And I have to put in my 2 cents on this.
Yeah.
And the reason why this is so important, what she just said, is because so many times we jump into things because we want it so badly. And there's nothing wrong with wanting something so badly. But there, I think for everything, you need a readiness, not just a readiness here, meaning I want it, I know I want it, I can visualize it. There has to be a readiness within. And there are times that in relationships we jump so quick, but we're not ready because we haven't healed. We haven't healed from a hurt from a previous relationship. We haven't healed from whatever self-esteem issue we have. We haven't healed from any childhood issue.
Right. And he had a lot of self-esteem issues to work out as a result of his marriage failing, and a lot of forgiveness of himself he had to reckon with. And I think they wound up rescheduling the trip a mere 5 months after they had canceled it. So it wasn't like it was a forever pause. It was just enough time for Craig to finish the process of the reckoning and the healing that he had to do to make sense out of what had happened, so that he didn't bring an excessive amount of that baggage with him into the new relationship. And he was able to handle it and to do it. So by the time they actually did get together, they were both really healthy, independently of each other, and able to blend their lives together. It was fabulous, and they're great together.
You already saw my face. I'm like, and it's because there is so much gold there. There's so much gold in this story. Everyone, seriously, can you believe it's already been an hour?
No.
I know you and I could talk for like 2 or even 3 hours. Everyone, what Marci...
God help our listeners.
But you know what? It's full of value. It's full of value.
Yeah.
Everyone, it is possible. Everything that Marci has shared here is so full of value. I highly recommend that you go over from the very beginning and listen to everything seriously, because, and let me see if I can make a summary of the nuggets that she shared, especially this last part. My God. For the sake of Valentine's Day and the fact that it's February is the month of love, seriously, that love of your life that you're seeking, first is going to require you to be a match to what it is that you want, but for you to be able to land to that love of your life. And this also applies to life. Inner work, everyone. It's you making sure that you are the best version of you, that you heal from anything that can be standing in your way. Because I love what Marci shared, how every relationship that she was in was mirroring what needed to be healed within.
Right.
And it is when we heal within and when we have the courage to give ourselves permission to do the very things that we want. And please correct me if I'm wrong, Marci, but one of the ways that we can even start giving ourselves permission is what I sense from everything that you were saying, is by following those instincts of yours, those things that you're feeling that you need to be doing, even if you don't understand it, but start following it.
Right. Absolutely. I started writing for Elephant Journal as just sort of this impetus, like, instead of just writing all these things in my journal, why not try to help other people or see if other people are even interested in the things that I was writing? And suddenly there are thousands of downloads and I'm like, maybe I have something here, And then it took me quite a long time to get prepared to write my memoir. I think what I needed was the safety and comfort and support of my marriage and my current wonderful relationship with my husband in order to feel safe enough to be as vulnerable as I needed to be in order to have this book be the authentic thing that it is. But then, like the whole concept of permission. So I've got the Permission to Land, the 2 books, and now the Permission to Heal is the podcast, and my whole message and my Patreon page, everything's called, but it looks like that it was a strategic branding decision.
And it wasn't.
It was the most haphazard, crazy, circuitous process. Like I had no idea I was doing any of these things until I started doing them one at a time. And what did we learn? Like things make sense when you look at them looking backward, but they don't make sense when you're going through them. Yes. I think a lot of things are like that.
Oh yeah. Marci, for those that want to purchase your book, for those that want to learn about you, for those that want to follow you, where can they learn about you? Where can they get the book?
Okay. My website, marcibrockman.com, is the hub for everything. Brockman has 2 M's, 2 N's rather, BROCKMANN, and Marci is MARCI. So it's marcibrockman.com. From there, you can get links. You can purchase my books. You can purchase any of the art or the scarves that I make from the art. You can have links to the podcast, links to the Patreon page, links to everything. But you can also find me on Facebook at Marci Brockman or on Instagram at Marci Brockman 27 and LinkedIn and Twitter and TikTok. And I'm everywhere. And my name is just Marci Brockman everywhere. The only one that's the anomaly is Instagram, which is Marci Brockman 27. But it's all linked and in the link tree on my Instagram, and it's everywhere. It's everywhere. But the books are also available on everywhere books are sold online. And yeah, that's it.
I'm going to be putting all that information for everyone to see shortly after this. And everyone, if you have any questions after this interview, if you're watching the replay, put #replay. If you're watching it live, #live, because I see there's someone watching it live. Any questions that you have, you can tag Marci or you could tag me. We're going to take a look at this. Marci is going to answer your questions. Marci, I want to thank you so much for this talk.
Can I just say one more thing before we sign off?
Of course.
Okay. So I started this Patreon page because I would like to build a community of people who are walking together through their healing journey. And there are 5 tiers of subscription levels that all have perks, exclusive content and free digital downloads of art and mugs and tote bags and all sorts of stuff. But what I also would like, I made a video about this today. What I would also like to do is promise 25% of the profits that I make from the sales of the book and all this other stuff to be donated to healing causes like healing addiction. There is an institute named the Caron Institute, CARON. It's in Pennsylvania, and they have a New York facility as well, and maybe in a couple places across the country. And those are places where people who have addictions can heal from their chemical dependency, but also learn all of the therapeutic tools that they need to heal their insides so that they're not looking to numb and self-medicate with chemicals. But it provides family therapy so that the whole family can heal from the whole thing. And this particular place saved a beloved family member of mine who was a drug addict, and he and his family were able to completely heal. And now he himself is a drug rehab counselor. And a place like this could have healed my mother. so that she didn't have to die the way she did and live the miserable the last decade of her life. And so what I would like to be able to do is provide scholarships for people who can't afford the treatment that they need for them and their families. So 25% of everything of all the profits that I make on all of this is going to go toward that. So.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is beautiful. Marci, thank you so, so much for all the wisdom you shared.
Thank you for having me here. This was really wonderful.
Oh my gosh, because I could just tell we could go on and on and on. Next thing you know, it's 10 p.m. and it's like, wait, what? What? Everyone, post your questions. Go follow Marci. I'm going to be putting all that information shortly so you can follow her, so you could get her book. I wish I had her book right now because I'll be like, hey, get the book.
It's on its way. I mailed it over a week ago.
I know.
I don't know. We're not that far from each other. I could have driven it to your house.
Oh, Marci, thank you so much. It's so wonderful speaking with you.
If they go to, I forgot about this too, if they go to marcibrockman.com and they order a copy of the memoir, they'll get the journal for free with a custom bookmark, which is what's on its way to you. Ooh, hit the microphone. So yeah, so there's that.
Thank you so much, Marci.
Thank you so much, Aura. This was great.
This was awesome. And bye, everyone. Bye.
So good to see you.
Nice to see you too. Bye.
Bye.